China has impact, China has diplomacy, China has the firepower, but China can do nothing about global choke points. Russia is actually cut off from the global financial chain. Russia has amongst the largest oil reserves in the world. Since 2022 February, Russia has been engaged in a war with Ukraine. Russia needs a partner which is solid as far as diplomacy and economics are concerned, and that partner is China. The Iran-US war has once again proved that sea routes are critical to global supply chains. And this is a lesson that China has also learned. There are two problems here, or at least two perspectives. Perspective one is Iran is a friend of China. 90% of Iran's oil is bought by China. But China also suffers because of the blockade, because there are two blockades, one by Iran and the other by the United States of America. And number two, if the blockade ends and if sanctions on Iran end, then China will not be the only country buying oil from Iran. Will China get cheap oil? So this is how nations think, ladies and gentlemen. And today we are going to talk about China's Ice Silk Road. The Ice Silk Road is supposedly a joint venture between Russia and China. It's been a few years that it started, but China started using it very aggressively after 2022. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Major Gaurav Arya and you're watching Open Collar. This talks about China's Ice Silk Road. Now, if you look at this map, and I'm going to explain the text a little bit later, but if you look at this map, this is currently how China does most of its trade. So it starts off, for example, from Shanghai. Now, Shanghai is just one starting point that we are mentioning here on the map. There are dozens of such ports all along China's eastern seaboard, northeast and east. So China sends its materials from here, manufactured goods, they come here. This is India. They come from here, and then through the el-Mandeb, they cross the Suez Canal, and then they reach Europe. Rotterdam in the Netherlands is again one point that we have mentioned. Now, China suddenly decided after deliberations, and this is not only after the el-Mandeb and the Strait of Hormuz were blocked. China has been figuring this out for a very, very long time, and so has India, by the way. One route by which China said, we can have an alternative to this route was the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor. But the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor is all land. It terminates at Gwadar, which is a seaport. But that is the termination point. The entire length of the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, some 3,000 kilometers plus, is all land. So China said, we must figure out another way, and this is that another way. Now, the difference here is that in the current route, or where the majority of China's trade happens, this is all, it starts from China, then it'll go through other countries, it'll pass through the Malacca, it'll go through various choke points and various geopolitical hotbeds, flashpoints, and then it's going to reach Europe. And nobody knows, actually, for sure, when and at what point in time which choke point is hot and how it's going to impact China's trade. Now, business does not run on uncertainty. China wanted certainty, so China and Russia, they grouped together and they started this Northern Sea route. Now, this route, if you look at it from here, it starts from China and then it touches Russian territory and it goes all through this. Now, now you can see it very clearly. This blue line being superimposed by a red line drawn by me. All this is Russian territory. This is all Russian territory, and then it enters Northern Europe. So this is what they're trying to do here. This is under control of Russia. This is not under control of China. China doesn't control the seas after, the international waters. China has impact, China has diplomacy, China has the firepower, but China can do nothing about global choke points. For example, the Strait of Hormuz. They can do nothing about it. Absolutely nothing. Even if Iran wants to sell oil to China, Iran can't sell oil to China because right here are the Americans. And the Iranians control just this part. The entry and the exit to and from the Strait of Hormuz towards the Gulf of Oman is controlled by the Americans. It's only the Strait of Hormuz specifically that is controlled by the Iranians today. So where does China go? China decides that we need a new route. Now, there are advantages and disadvantages of this route. The advantages are, obviously, it takes almost half the time. So this route here, this long route here, takes 30 to 40 days via the Suez Canal. But if you go up from Russia, it takes just 20 days approximately, give or take. It saves time. There is very little uncertainty because these waters are controlled by Russia. It saves fuel. It saves freight cost. It saves insurance cost. It saves everything. So technically speaking, supposedly, a ship could go twice on the northern route, then it would go from the southern route. It can go twice. It's twice as fast, almost, approximately, give or take a week. So this is very good for China, except that these waters are frozen during winters. So there is a small window of 4 to 5 months when the northern routes are fully active, 4 to 5 months. And China takes advantage. But what is really helping Russia and China is the rising temperatures. And more the temperatures rise because of global warming, a degree here and a degree there, it helps melt ice faster. While you may say that this is not okay for the environment, it's okay for China, it's good for China, it's good for Russia, it's good for their trade, because then these waters become accessible for more than 6 months in a year. And who knows, maybe 8 months one day. That is what China and Russia are hoping for. They have icebreakers. They have all sorts of equipment there, which can, because all these waters are frozen solid, friends. Frozen solid during the winter months. In fact, after August, September, the temperatures start plummeting. But shorter Asia-Europe journey, 50% less. Navigation window mainly from July to October. And they're saying that they require a lot of icebreaker support during certain months. And Russia is amongst the lead icebreaker manufacturers in the world. Russia, Finland, and all these countries, they make the maximum amount of icebreakers because they need them. Such is the climate, such is the weather in Russia, they need them. So Russia makes these icebreakers, and the icebreakers travel in front of the ships, they break the ice, and the ships go. But there is a time during peak winter months, at least 4 months or 5 months in a year, when the ice is so solid that it becomes difficult even for the icebreakers to break it. So therefore, what they do is they use it to the maximum of 5 to 6 months and then maybe extend by a month or so with icebreakers. That's about it. These waters, on the other hand, can be used 24/7, but there are geopolitical shocks. China has figured out, along with Russia, an alternate route. Now, I'd like to tell you very quickly, why does China need Russia and why does Russia need China? Russia is under sanctions. Russia is actually cut off from the global financial chain. SWIFT does not work in Russia. So China gets from Russia energy security. Russia has amongst the largest oil reserves in the world, gas reserves in the world, amongst the largest. And Russia supplies oil, LNG, and Arctic resources. It's important. China needs Russia to tap into the Arctic resources. And as far as Russia is concerned, the Arctic is next door. Shorter, reliable route. We're talking about the route above, the blue route here, which we showed you in the last map, last slide. Strategic diversification reduces dependence on traditional maritime choke points. You know all about that. And real trade in action. Russian energy to China. LNG imports from Russia rose nearly 28% because they use the Arctic route. Now, what does Russia get from China? Very important. Investment and money. Russia lacks investment, lacks money. And for a long time, since 2022 February, Russia has been engaged in a war with Ukraine. And Ukraine is hitting back harder and harder. It's just hitting back deeper and harder. Every week you see the Ukrainians hitting deeper and harder. In places that nobody ever imagined a year back. But the Ukrainians are doing it and doing it very successfully. The Russians require investment and money from China, shipment and cargo. Chinese shipping companies bring cargo vessels and consistent trade volumes. This is the lifeblood of the Russian economy. Technology and equipment, of course. China is the largest manufacturer of any kind of equipment in the world. Any kind. China is the hub, is the global manufacturing hub, and that is how Russia benefits, and market and demand, a huge market for Russian energy. So what Russia essentially sends to China is energy. And this entire relationship is largely based on energy exports from Russia to China, and China giving other sort of material help and investment and money, and also a window to the world for Russia. Russia needs a partner which is solid as far as diplomacy and economics are concerned, and that partner is China. With this, I come to the end of this video today. Thank you for watching Open Caller. Jai Hind.